Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
Canada has pulled off an energy coup that may rock the world national gas market. The unthinkable has happened. Europe has moved away from the United States and is now choosing Canadian liquefied natural gas, LNG, which could weaken America's energy strength and put billions of dollars in U.S. exports at risk. The Biden administration was surprised, and current President Donald Trump is said to be very upset about the situation. The U.S. energy sector is close to a serious downfall.
Suspended tariffs on all Canadian products.
In Europe and here in the UK, businesses are grappling with how to react to a new, seen as more hostile trade environment.
The European Union has made a big decision by signing an important deal with Canada, moving away from the United States' LNG to find a more affordable, cleaner, and reliable energy source. For a long time, U.S. LNG exports did well because Europe relied on them after Russia invaded Ukraine, but that strong position is now facing challenges. Canada's quickly growing LNG industry, highlighted by the huge LNG Canada project, is changing the global market in ways that Washington didn't expect. This big change is not just a financial hit, it's a global problem. Since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, Europe has depended a lot on American gas to help with its energy problems. As Canada takes action, the EU's reliance on the U.S. is weakening. Reports say that European countries, looking for cheaper energy, have discovered that Canada's LNG prices are much better. Also, with strict environmental rules and growing demand for cleaner options, Canadian LNG is becoming the top choice because it has lower carbon emissions than U.S. shale gas. This is bad news for big energy companies in the U.S. American LNG suppliers such as Cheniere Energy and ExxonMobil are now rushing to react to the competition from Canada, as valuable long-term contracts in Europe are being lost. If this trend keeps going, the U.S. might face a huge financial loss, causing economic problems and possible job cuts in the already weak energy sector. Donald Trump, always vocal about money issues, has apparently lost his temper over the situation. Insiders say that Trump thinks this shows the former president's energy policies, which are still in effect, are not working well. Trump, who strongly advocates for U.S. energy leadership, and he has severely criticized the Biden administration for letting Canada boost its position to the detriment of American companies. This is really shameful. Trump reportedly expressed frustration during a private meeting with energy executives, saying, "The U.S. was the top in energy exports, and now Canada is taking our business due to Biden's policies." Republican lawmakers are starting to push for inquiries into how the Biden administration was managing LNG export policies. They claim that excessive rules and climate regulations have hurt America's ability to compete. LNG Canada is a big project in British Columbia, costing $40 billion, and it's been steadily increasing its production. Canadian LNG has geographical benefits that make it less expensive and simpler to send to Europe and Asia, unlike U.S. LNG, which needs extra energy-heavy steps to be transported from the Gulf of Mexico. Experts believe that projects on Canada's west coast are well placed to serve both European and Asian markets, providing the country with a benefit that the U.S. does not have. With more Canadian LNG terminals starting up, global buyers will find it even more appealing to move away from U.S. suppliers. At the same time, European leaders are excited about their increasing partnership with Canada, pointing out both economic advantages and political stability. In contrast to the U.S., where energy policy changes a lot with different leaders, Canada provides stability, an important aspect for lasting investments and agreements. This agreement might lead to serious consequences for the U.S. auto industry. The Biden administration's tariffs on Canadian electric vehicles and important minerals have already created tension between the two allies, and the current president is suffering the blow of it. If Canada responds by focusing on energy agreements with Europe and holding back important raw materials, American car manufacturers might encounter serious supply chain issues. Experts say that a big trade war might start, which could cause prices to go up for shoppers and result in job cuts in factories. This increase would be a big success for European car makers, who could get cheaper Canadian EV materials while U.S. companies face tough supply issues. Tesla, Ford, and GM are already facing challenges in the shift to electric vehicles, and they certainly don't need a global energy conflict making it harder for them to get the materials they need. With questions about Canada's ties to the United States, some people are suggesting a different route, stepping back from the Americans a little and becoming part of the European Union. The group of 27 states includes different countries that Canada already has strong economic, historic, and political connections with, like France and Germany. It's important to note that the United Kingdom, which Canada likely owes a significant debt to, exited the EU in 2020. Recently, there has been a lot of talk about Canada possibly joining the EU. This comes after an article in The Economist by Stanley Pignall, who is the Brussels bureau chief for the publication, suggested that Canada should become part of its European neighbors. The EU is Canada's second biggest trading partner, right after the United States. Sure, being part of the EU may not bring about the results that some people expect. Canada just managed to escape tough tariffs and got an extra 30 days from U.S. President Donald Trump. But Trump has also suggested the idea of imposing tariffs on the EU as a form of punishment. Joining the EU would mean making some big changes, like possibly getting a new currency and likely having some outside authority involved in Canadian matters. And that's if we can keep interest in Europe alive during the long process of becoming a member. The European Union doesn't have very detailed rules about how close a country needs to be to Europe to join. However, the Maastricht Treaty, which established the EU in 1992, states that any European state that follows the EU's principles can apply to become a member. This was only checked once when Morocco in the 1980s asked about joining and was told, "No, you are not in Europe, and so you cannot join," said Achim Hurlman, a professor of political science at Carleton University. I don't see why the same wouldn't work for Canada. That's the first step to take. A possible way to fix it might be for European lawmakers to change the treaty to allow European or allied countries to join, for instance. There are more rules for joining the EU found in the Copenhagen criteria. They are quite simple and clear. The country needs to be a democracy that honors rights, has a market economy, and aligns with the goals and values of the EU. But geography is truly the tricky part. A map has been shared on social media that shows Hans Island, a small rock located in the Nares Strait between Canada's Ellesmere Island and Greenland, which is a territory of Denmark. The image suggests that since Canada is next to a European country, Hans Island is divided right in the center. But it's not as simple as that. Right now, there is just one EU member that isn't completely in Europe, Cyprus. It's actually in West Asia, but is divided in a tricky way between Greek Cyprus, which is part of the EU, and Turkish Cyprus, which isn't. Still, it's pretty clear that Cyprus has strong European cultural and historical ties. Some other countries that want to join the EU and are not located in Europe are Armenia and Georgia. Overall, it's very unlikely, mainly because the process of joining the EU takes a long time. Turkey, for instance, asked to join the EU in 1987. The process is still happening almost 40 years later. Imagine if the EU decided for some reason that we're European. What comes next? It will be a long journey, a really long road. The European Union has many rules that are different from those in Canada. The EU has a really wide range of policies covering many areas like economic rules, market guidelines, environmental standards, and workplace safety, among others. The currency is the clearest example. Canada uses its own money called the Canadian dollar. Most countries in the European Union use the euro, but there are 7 that do not. Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and Sweden don't use the euro. Except for Denmark, these countries must change to the euro when they meet specific economic goals. But there are many other problems: food regulations, fuel guidelines, work laws, and so on. If Canada joined the EU, its laws and rules would be closely examined by European nations and would have to match European law on various topics, including farming, environmental policies, and criminal justice. No country in the EU can have the death penalty. Canada doesn't do that, but we couldn't bring it back as a member of the EU. What would it mean for the Canadian economy to join the EU? It would provide Canada with more access to a big group of trading partners. The EU is now Canada's second biggest trading partner, and Canada has a free trade deal with the European Union. The Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, was mostly created when Stephen Harper was Prime Minister, but it started working under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Right now, it is in a trial phase, which means that around 98% of taxes on goods between Canada and the EU have been removed. But joining officially would really mean better access to the market. Being part of the European single market is much broader than what Canada has right now, even with the CETA agreement. This is mainly because the single market covers not only the absence of tariffs, but also the shared acceptance of product standards and similar aspects. Right now, when you check out Canada-EU trade, there are many obstacles in food safety rules, product standards, and similar areas that the trade agreement doesn't match up. In the EU single market, member states are supposed to acknowledge each other's conditions. This would mean less trouble for trade and also make it easier for people to move around because of those rules. So what are the benefits of Canada joining the EU? Besides possible economic advantages, Canada's wouldn't have to wait in the non-EU line at European airports. However, putting aside small inconveniences, there would be more advantages. It would also help boost Canada's diplomatic influence and presence in the world through the EU. Even if it gave up a bit of control, Canada would have a voice in EU decisions with representatives in the European Parliament. Also, being able to move freely in Europe might be good for Canadians. Canadians could easily move to Paris and enjoy working and eating baguettes. That being said, some of the benefits of the EU, like the simple movement of goods and people across the continent, wouldn't happen for Canada in the same way since we're separated by an ocean and not just nearby. As Europe looks to Canada and the US seems to be losing its hold, the big question is, can America recover from this? Some experts say that the US still has important strengths, like large shale reserves and a strong LNG setup. But if Washington doesn't move quickly to address Canada's growing influence, the US might end up left out in the global energy competition. Policy experts are urging quick steps, such as providing incentives to reduce US LNG costs, speeding up the process for new export terminals, and reassessing trade policies that lead allies to seek other suppliers. With political splits getting bigger, it looks like strong action won't be happening soon. For many years, the US led the world in LNG trade, earning billions from energy agreements with Europe. As Canada steps up as a new energy leader, things are shifting quickly. As the EU shifts its focus to Canadian gas and tensions grow in Washington, it's clear that America's position as the top LNG leader is facing a real challenge. Will US gas exports fall due to increasing competition? Can the US find a way to get ahead of Canada before it's too late? One thing is clear, the energy conflict is just starting. And with that, we conclude this video. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to subscribe for more updates on the latest in global economics and politics. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified every time we post a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.